conference committee meeting to go over the items that still are technically in review and in play for tax committee on tax policy that were kind of left over from last year, I guess is the best way to say that. So feel free to come up. Staff has got copies of that available, and we'll get started once everybody has some eyes on that.
As those are being distributed, Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank you for calling the conference committee. I appreciate it. Anxious to get to work on tax policy this year, so thank you.
Yeah, we may set a new record for getting the tax plan out. We'll see.
I think we're going to.
Okay, it looks like everybody might have a copy of the information in front of them, hopefully. At this point, I think I'll just turn it over to the research, Edward Penner from Legislative Research. We're going to kind of review the items that came out of the bills that we had in conference, the topics that we had in conference last year. And we'll do a quick review on the fiscal notes as they were last year. Obviously, if that becomes part of a package deal or an item for consideration, we'll update those fiscal notes if there's any changes for this year. But I'll turn it over to Eddie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everybody should have two documents that we brought today. One is it's kind of a bizarre looking table where the top is all under the Senate column, the bottom's on the House column. That's because it's sorted by bill number, and the Senate gets to start at 1, where the House starts at 2001. And the other one is a table of the specific items that were in the two bills that were vetoed and not overridden last year. I'm going to talk primarily from the one that does not have the fiscal information, just to highlight that. But then when we get to the bills, probably at the end of it, I'll just talk through the fiscal information from those two bills. So this is, in essence, just a list of all of the conference-able provisions from this biennium. And so Senate Bill 8 is a bill that both chambers passed a version of. The Senate passed it, including some changes to personal property filing laws. The House retained those changes and also added to it provisions related to reducing the withholding penalties for late filings of withholdings, or late remittances of withholdings, I suppose I should say. Senate Bill 33 included various income tax items and some changes to the homestead property tax refund program. Those various income tax items were a cost of living adjustment for the standard deduction, changes to I believe, a full exemption to Social Security benefits, from the income tax, a full exemption of retirement plan income from the income tax, those homestead program changes, net operating loss subtraction modification changes, and disallowance subtraction modification changes for certain federal tax credits. Senate Bill 40 included just a subset of those provisions, the net operating loss changes and the homestead program changes. Senate Bill 53 included a sales tax exclusion for manufacturers' coupons from the taxable purchase price. Senate Bill 55 included a clarification of a property tax exemption for Strother Field Airport. Senate Bill 96 included a tax credit for pregnancy and, I believe, residential maternity center contributions. Senate Bill 127 included sales tax authority for Dickinson County. I do believe that was one of the provisions that was enacted into law last year. And so unless Dickinson County is looking for further authority, that might be one that you can strike from your list. Senate Bill 147 included changes to the adoption tax credit. Senate Bill 169 was the second of the three bills that both chambers passed a version of. The Senate version of that was an income tax plan providing for a single rate of 4.75%. The House version of that provided for an income tax plan with a single rate of, I believe, 5.25%. It also provided for privilege tax rate reductions and corporation tax rate reductions that were coupled with the discontinuance of rate reductions associated with the Apex Economic Development Program, an expansion of the exemption of Social Security income from the income tax, an increase to the standard deduction for single filers, and an indexing on a cost of living basis for the standard deduction amounts for all filers, an acceleration of the elimination of the state sales and use tax on food and food ingredients, and an increase to the exemption of residential property from the statewide school finance levy to $65,000. And then it also allowed for contributions to 529 accounts made during the first, I guess, 3.5 months of the tax year to be attributable to either the current tax year or the previous tax year on the state returns. Senate Bill 248 included sales tax exemptions for both food and food ingredients, full exemptions, and also certain purchases made by the state schools for the deaf and blind. Senate Bill 252 included property and sales tax exemptions for certain entities with whom there has been competition by government enterprises. Senate Bill 300 included privilege tax rate reductions. Senate Bill 2000, House Bill 2002 is the third of the three bills that received action by both chambers. The House version of that provided for future reimbursement of the printing and postage costs for revenue neutral rate notices sent out by the counties. The Senate version of that included more provisions. It included that provision, and it also included provisions specifying further information and the form to be used by local governments in distributing those revenue neutral rate hearing notices. It included an expansion of the number of years to be provided under in terms of the property valuation notices that are annually mailed out. It included provisions providing for certain certified residential real property appraisals to be able to serve as evidence in residential real property valuation appeals. To serve as certain evidence is probably a better way to phrase that. It provided for the repeal of the prohibition of a payment under protest to be made in a year in which a taxpayer has already appealed their valuation pursuant to the equalization appeal procedure. And it codified certain agricultural land adverse influences for property tax purposes. House Bill 2026 provided for lien release filings to be made by the Department of Revenue. Under current law, they are mailed to the taxpayer, who then is responsible for undertaking the actual filing. House Bill 2036 provided for property tax exemptions for certain retired and disabled veterans. House Bill 2106 provided for a sales tax exemption for certain telecommunications infrastructure and machinery and equipment. House Bill 2176 provided for the creation of the Arkansas City and Udall library districts. House Bill 2201 provided for additional prior year information to be provided on the appraisal notice. That is similar to a provision that was in the Senate version of 2002. House Bill 2229 provided for a sales tax deduction for certain motor vehicle transactions. House Bill 2232 provided for the property valuation division of the Department of Revenue to be able to approve certain appraisal courses related specifically to Kansas property tax law. And I believe that is an additional provision that was enacted into law. So you can probably strike that from your lists. House Bill 2254 provided for the classification of certain land used for agritourism to be agricultural land for property tax purposes. House Bill 2317 provided for electronic delivery of tax statements and appraisal notices by county offices, and that is another provision that I'm getting a nod from the revisers telling me that was also enacted into law. House Bill 2416 provided for sales tax exemptions for the area agencies on aging and Kansas Suicide Prevention headquarters, and those were also enacted into law. House Bill 2421 provided for Grant County Sales Tax Authority, and that was enacted into law. And House Bill 2465 provided for certain changes to the SALT Parity Act. And so that is kind of the full list of conferenceable provisions. I'm happy to move on to last year's fiscal information, but I think it might be good to stand for some questions there.
Yes, thank you, Eddie. Madam Chair, do you have any questions on your side?
We don't. Thank you.
Okay. And I just want to clarify, perhaps Eddie or the revisers, when an item is conferenceable, that means that it has passed at least one chamber. Is that correct?
That's the way I'm using the term right now. I don't know if the revisers.
Yes, excuse me. Under the rule, yes, for a rule or for a provision to be conferenceable under the joint rules, the generally provision, the subject matter has to have passed one chamber.
I just wanted clarification on that for everyone's edification. Okay. Do you guys have any questions?
All right, moving on to the second handout. Or were there? No, okay. Two bills last year, of course, were passed by the legislature and vetoed by the governor and not overridden. And this handout includes kind of a very short summary description of the provisions in those bills, the effective date of those bills, and then the SGF and all funds fiscal impact of those bills as it was during the 2023 session. Representative Smith already mentioned this, but I think it's worth repeating. And I imagine the Department of Revenue will appreciate the repetition of this, that some of these provisions, due to updated tax information since that time, will have different fiscal impacts if they were to be proposed today because of the fact that we have more information than we did a year ago. And also, obviously, this anticipates some of these being effective at specific points in time. If the effective dates of any of these provisions were to change as a part of any proposals this year, obviously that as well would result in changes to the fiscal impact. And also, even if the effective date were not to change, it's possible that some of the fiscal impact could shift in terms of years by virtue of the fact that it would be being implemented at a different point in time. So I just want to highlight all of those kind of realities before we get into this. So starting with Senate Bill 169, that included 7 substantive provisions. The first of those was an income tax plan providing for a single rate of 5.15% and certain untaxed taxable income on the front end. That would have reduced state receipts by about $99 million in 24, bumping up to $332 million in 25 and $335 million in 26. The second of those provisions were corporation income tax rate reductions, and that would have reduced receipts by $12 million in 24, $41 million in 25 and 26. It's probably worth highlighting here that at this point, the impact of that provision has been incorporated into the consensus revenue estimates by virtue of the Integra Apex agreement, which was kind of the basis for that reduction. The third item is privilege tax rate reductions. It was scheduled to happen over 2 years. There is a typo in this document. It says tax year 2025 and 2025. That should say tax year 2024 and 2025. That would have reduced receipts by $6 million, $7 million, and $7 million. The fourth provision was a change to the exemption for Social Security income. I believe that it provided for that exemption to be phased in from $75,000 to $100,000 of federal adjusted gross income, and then the upper bound, that $100,000, to be increased by $5,000 per year prospectively, and that would have reduced state receipts by $22 million, and then $26 million. The fifth provision was the indexing of the standard deduction amounts. That would have reduced state receipts by $4 million, $16 million, and $25 million. The sixth provision was acceleration of the food and food ingredients state sales tax elimination to January 1 of 2024, and also the change to the state highway fund disposition of revenues at that time, which would have reduced fiscal year 24 receipts by 116 million and fiscal year 25 receipts by 112 million. I should highlight that's the general fund portion of that provision. There's an additional about 3 million in 24 of all funds, and then a reduction of about 3.5 million of all funds in fiscal 25 because of the state highway fund impact. And the final provision of SB 169 was an increase to the residential exemption from the statewide school finance levy, and I should have had open in front of me what that increase was to, and we'll get to that pretty quickly. I think it was
80,000.
I couldn't remember if it was 60 or 80.
60. Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
the House came in at 80,000 and we accepted 60,000 because we were pushing for a little bit more aggressive on the Social Security. So thank you.
All right, the increase of that to $60,000. That has no state general fund receipt impact. The receipts from that tax are deposited into the state school district finance fund. However, as a practical matter, reductions to receipts to the state school district finance fund result in increases of state general fund expenditures. So it does have an SGF impact. It's an SGF expenditure impact instead of an SGF revenue impact. And that is all of the provisions in SB 169. I would pause there for questions on 169 or its provisions.
I do have some questions, if we may, Mr. Chairman. I just want to get clarification on the standard deduction, that it was only the indexing, or was that a change in the standard deduction values? I want to confirm.
That was only the indexing. There was no baseline change to the number, which is why the impact is so small that first year.
That's what we thought. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that. Also, if I may, the original bill in 2022 was 100,000 on the 20 mil personal or homestead property exemption. And I was wondering if you could provide that fiscal note for us, since I know we're looking at 60, 80, 75, and 100,000. Would that be okay if we looked at those numbers, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly. Yes, I think the more numbers we have in front of us. And do you want because I believe, did we keep in the formula to kind of the growth index formula last year? Was that part of it after the increase? We also kept that?
We did keep that. I'm glad you brought that up. So could you include that with the numbers for each of those?
60, 75, 80, and 100.
Well, I don't think we need 60 since we're going to increase, but I think 75, 80, and 100. Do you think, Mr. Chairman?
I think that's reasonable to take a look at.
And I had, could we also get the fiscal note on the privilege tax just being implemented in 2024? Would you be okay with that? Okay, so we could take a look at that also. The 1% all in 1 year.
So the same final rates as last year's would have provided for, but have it effective in tax year 24.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Representative Sawyer has a question as well.
Yeah, while we're looking at numbers, if we move the food sales tax elimination acceleration to April 1st of 2025, I'd be curious how that changes the fiscal note.
April 1st of 25?
Oh, 24. I'm
24.
Sorry, 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I could add another number to that, if we could look at July 1st for businesses, kind of keeping them in mind. April seems a little aggressive, but would that be okay with you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I think the more information and options we have in front of us, not that makes the revisor's job any easier or the research department, but allows us to make the best decision. So.
Okay, thank you. I just, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That one should be pretty easy on the food sales tax because you just cut off that portion of the year. So.
Yeah, and I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'll throw you a major softball. The House was very gracious to us last year to come to 515, and we're going to request the numbers for 525 so that we can look at where you were at and consider your position. Is that okay?
I'm not going to disagree with that. Just for clarification, and I apologize, I was making notes. Eddie, when you were covering that very first item there, did you cover the 6,150 and the 12,300, kind of where the income tax becomes?
I did
Taxable.
not cover that, but I can touch on it. The House provided for untaxed taxable income, maybe the best way to phrase it, of $6,150 and $12,300 in its version of SB 169. Those amounts were maintained in the conference committee report brief of SB 169, and so my understanding is that those are the numbers you're wanting to look at for kind of all plans, and if you don't specify otherwise and refer to a single income tax rate number, that's what I'm planning on including as kind of the baseline. If that.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate that. And since we are looking at 525, we would also like to take a look at the numbers increasing the personal income tax exemption. We know that that helps people directly, especially people with disabilities, as I'm told. And so we would like to help those people out as much as possible. So if you would entertain looking at some increases on that, I'll let you decide where you want to land, but I really would like a look at increasing those numbers.
Yeah, if we could get a kind of a dollar amount per dollar increase, that would allow us to kind of build our package to whatever fiscal note we want to. I think that'd be a great idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To the
So
personal,
how about
to the personal exemption amount?
Yeah, how about we look at numbers with $50 increments? Would that be acceptable for the committee? Okay, I know we're at 22.5 if I'm correct,
250
except
is the
for
current.
2250, except for 100% disabled veterans. They are double
Yeah,
that number.
5,000.
Okay, so, okay. Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure. Sure.
It's been brought to my attention, and I think you've mentioned this in the past. If we could get numbers that would index the personal exemption also, as we're doing with the standard deduction. I think based off the same equation, would that work?
Yes, that tracks right along with our kind of the reasoning and the concept behind that policy is you allow those numbers to not be stagnant, but to grow with inflation as the purchasing power of your earning dollar decreases, provide some more exemption there. So we can certainly take a look at that too.
And I just want to make sure I understand you intend to use the same adjustment formula provided by section 1F3 of the Internal Revenue Code for all of that.
That would be
the same
correct.
thing the feds.
That would be correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we're trying to simplify the tax code, and that would help simplify it if we're using the same equations.
Okay. Are you ready to move on down to Senate Bill 8, or is there anything else in the provisions of 169?
I think we're ready to move on.
Okay. Senate Bill 8 included a number of provisions. Unlike Senate Bill 169, I can't count these without stopping and actually using my fingers to count them. So, but it included changes to the personal property filings that were a part of Senate Bill 8 as it passed both chambers. It included the agritourism land classification provision that was a part of House Bill 2254. It included the homestead refund program changes that were a part of Senate Bill 33. It included a different version of the government competition exemption, I believe limited to property tax, but conceptually similar to Senate Bill 252. And I'm going to back up one now to the homestead refund program changes. That would have reduced state receipts by $28 million in fiscal years 2024 and 2025, and then increase to $39 million in 2026.
Eddie, we've got a question
Oh,
here from
yeah.
Representative
Can you
Sawyer.
refresh my memory on those changes we made? I can't remember exactly what we agreed to.
To the government competition exemption?
No, the homestead refund changes.
Yeah, just 1 second.
Was it 500?
It was an increase in both the, I believe, both the income amount and the valuation amount that were eligible.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. So it was an increase to 500,000 on the valuation with the equation to increase each year. The household income was to 80,000 minus 100% of the Social Security. Currently, it's only 50% of the Social Security. And then we did change it for disabled veterans. We removed, I think it was the income limit. Yeah, I'm getting the nod. It was the income limit. The household valuation still remained for disabled veterans.
Okay, so current law, if I remember right, was 50,000 and 50% of Social Security. So we raised it to 80,000 and
Minus Social Security.
minus 100% Social Security.
Yes, and this is the household income. It's
Right.
not, so you may have 5 people in the household or 2 people or 1.
And then the house valuation from 350 to 500? Was
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I don't mean to get down in the weeds, but do we remember, is that indexed? Is there a growth index in that? Okay, I was thinking there was.
You know, it was pointed out to me, there's a growth index for the house valuation, but not for the income. So that is something, I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Chairman. We should request a fiscal note to look at that. That would be a great idea.
I think the $50,000 income limitation is indexed under current law, and the proposal that was a part of Senate Bill 8 last year provided for a formula to increase the valuation limit.
Okay, I had it reversed. I apologize.
So
Thank you.
So were this item to become law, they would both be indexed. Okay. The conference committee also included the provisions regarding the revenue neutral rate notice that were included in Senate Bill 2002, and the reimbursement for 1 year, the 1 further year of reimbursement for those printing and postage costs. As you can see, that shows up as a $1.3 million reduction to the SGF and a $0 change to the all funds. That's because that is a transfer within state funds, and then it becomes an expenditure from the fund which receives the transfer. So it's an increase in state expenditures, but no increase in SGF expenditures, a reduction in SGF revenue. It included the property valuation notice changes of requiring additional years. It included the changes to the property appeal process related to the eliminating the prohibition on appealing via the payment under protest process if the taxpayer has already used the equalization appeal process. It included the provisions codifying the agricultural land adverse influences. It included the telecommunications sales tax exemption that was a part of House Bill 2106. That provision reduced state general fund receipts by $14 million per year, an additional $3 million of state highway fund receipts for a total state all funds receipts of about $17 million per year. It included the sales tax exclusion for manufacturers' coupons from Senate Bill 53, which reduced the state general fund by $1 million in the first year and $2 million in all years thereafter, and also had a small state highway fund impact. It included the net operation loss carry forward, carry back provisions. Those were retroactive to tax years 18 through 20. And so that had an $8.4 million impact in both fiscal 24 and 25, but then no impact in any years after that. It included the federal tax credit disallowances. Those had a $7.3 million impact in fiscal 24, $2.8 million in fiscal 25, and $1.4 million in 26. Some of those federal tax credits were limited to years during the pandemic and are not ongoing. There was also a certain ongoing component of some of them. It included the SALT Parity Act modifications. It included the withholding tax penalty changes. It included the Pregnancy Resource Act, which is the Pregnancy and Residential Maternity Center Contribution Tax Credit from Senate Bill 96. It included the adoption tax credit change, which the adoption tax credit changes from Senate Bill 147. I'm going to back up. The Pregnancy Resource Act reduced state receipts by $10 million each year, the adoption tax credit by $11 million each year. And then it included changes to the Disability Employment Act credit. And here is another typo that I found on the sheet. That says 10.6 that first year. I believe that to be 0.5 million each year. And with that, I would stand for whatever questions the committee might have on Senate Bill 8's provisions.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have several questions, if I may. The Disability Employment Act credit, could we get a fiscal note if we were to make that retroactive? It's sunset and is stopped this year. We need to get that provision in as soon as possible. I know Representative Tarwater and others have worked very hard on that legislation, and I'd like to be able to get that across the line for them. Okay. Thank you. It's the second time I've mentioned him today. He also was the one with the 20 mil idea on increasing that exemption. It hadn't happened in years, so I appreciate that. Good ideas come from different places. So, Mr. Chairman, I also would ask for a fiscal note on the homestead expansion of that program. If we were to allow applicants to apply for it and freeze their values at the 2021 valuation, that was the origination of the program. And that way we would allow, yes, it would allow individuals that did not know about the program, and it would allow more people the opportunity to be in the program before some of these massive valuation increases that we've seen. So if we could get the fiscal note on that, that would be great.
Just to clarify, I believe that is the way it was written last year.
It was.
And you would like it to still be that same way, but being implemented today.
It was.
Okay.
That is correct. Thank you. Thank you. Could we get updates on, I guess I'd ask for all the fiscal notes to be updated, but I don't know about retroactivity. I don't know. Mr. Chairman, I think we just move forward on the rest of them. Would that be?
Well, and Madam Chair, all full disclosure, it's my intent to focus primarily, as far as the bill that we have in conference right now, to focus on tax relief for Kansans. Primarily what we're looking at on these sheets, Senate Bill 169 deals a lot with income tax and property tax. I would like that to be our main focus, not at all to ignore the provisions out of Senate Bill 8, but just to make staff's job a little easier. We don't need to update a lot of the Senate Bill 8 fiscal notes for Tuesday, if that's too much of a ask.
That's an excellent point, Mr. Chairman. I think that's great. I appreciate what you're doing, and so I think we will focus on those other provisions, but I would like those notes for moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. And I know it's unusual to be here with not just a week left in the session. This is kind of unusual. So
yeah, but we're going to operate like there's just a week left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, please no.
Yeah. No.
Representative Sawyer.
We're talking about that too. I know there's some provisions in Senate Bill 8 that we have not even heard on the House side, and I think there are probably some in there that you guys hadn't heard yet either. I don't know.
No, we've heard them all.
You've heard them all. We've heard them all.
Yeah.
So I do think this gives us an opportunity to maybe hear some of this stuff so that we can understand it better. It's kind of tough when you're conferencing. We hadn't heard the bill and we're dealing with it. So it'd be nice if we could, it gives us time now to actually hear some of this stuff.
Understandable. Yeah. You can assume that if you didn't hear it, we did, because it passed one chamber or the other. Yeah. So, understandable. We won't move as quickly on some of this stuff. But I would like the numbers so that we know what we're looking at for a total package. I know you guys understand that more than anyone. It seems like the tax people get it. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
and as we go through the hearing process with some of those that we queue up, we'll make sure we get updated fiscal notes at that time and be fairly aggressive on our schedule so we can tackle this. So,
We appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
any further questions, Madam Chair, from your side?
No, I just appreciate it. We've seen all this before. We've been here before. So I'm very anxious that we can get it across the finish line. Simplified tax code would help all Kansans. I know many spend hours or pay people to prepare their tax. So the simpler, the less burdensome we can make it, I think that'll be wonderful. It's great that we're all on the same page and wanting lower taxes for Kansans.
Yeah, and that is my focus. We're not ready to make a formal offer right now, but we will get updated information on the fiscal notes and come in next week on Tuesday morning, ready to work. And like I say, right now, my main focus that I'm wanting to do is income tax and property tax relief for Kansans. Not to say that anything else is off the table, but that I want that to be my primary focus in 2284.
That would be great. And I know the Senate has passed it several times, Mr. Chairman, the Social Security exemption on state income tax. And I know the House has been, you have been so gracious with us and helping us make that a priority for the state of Kansas. And so I'm anxious. I don't know if we asked for that fiscal note for 100% reduction, but hopefully we can put that across the line too, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I would agree.
Okay. And next week then, Tuesday, would you like to continue the
Yes,
conversation?
I've been shooting a text message to my committee assistant. She will be working on a room. I think we could go ahead and set a time and then the room would be to be announced. She hasn't gotten back to me yet, but would 10:30 on Tuesday morning be all right? We have some 9 o'clock committees and on the floor at 11, 10:30 might be a good chance to get in if that works with your schedules.
I think that would be great because we'll just come down from the tax committee to meet with the conference committee. That'd be wonderful.
Okay.
Okay.
I will announce the room number as soon as we get something lined up then.
Okay. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody for coming in.